Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are looking at a scenario that, on paper, reads a bit like a farce, but in practice, it really functions as a psychological thriller.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're talking about a washed-up daredevil, a very sharp bush, a litigious entourage, and a train crash right in the middle of Montana.
It does sound like a collection of totally random elements, doesn't it? A bit slapstick, honestly. But when you really dig into the source material, Mary Daheim's Loco Motive, what we're actually seeing is a masterclass in what I like to call stress convergence.
Stress convergence.
Yeah.
That sounds clinical. I actually really like it.
Well, it's the most accurate way to describe it, I think. You have these three distinct timelines of chaos. You've got the legal, the domestic, and the criminal.
Right.
And they shouldn't overlap at all, but they collide perfectly to basically break down the protagonist, Judith McMonigle Flynn.
So our mission for today, for you listening, is to basically map out these timelines. We're going to look at the Hillside Manor incident, not just as a cozy mystery plot. There's a real case study in escalation. We have the passenger manifests, we have the agricultural data on sugar beets, and we have the specs on a very expensive camera.
And we have the psychology of a woman who just wants a vacation and instead gets a felony-level crisis.
Yeah, exactly. Let's start with the inciting incident. I mean, the B&B debacle. So we are at Hillside Manor. It's the week before Halloween. Set the scene for us a bit.
Okay, so the atmosphere is crucial here. We are up in the Pacific Northwest. The weather is turning. It's windy. It's rainy. It's got that classic spooky season vibe going on.
Oh, totally.
And Judith, who runs this B&B, is hosting a guest who goes by the name Wee Willie Weevil.
Now, I have to stop you right there because the name alone implies a lot. For those listening who might not know this specific archetype, who exactly is this guy?
Right, so think back to the 1970s daredevil craze.
Weevil type stuff.
Exactly. The jumpsuits, the motorcycles, the martial arts movies that were maybe, a little low budget. Willie was a star in that era. But time is undefeated, right? He's aged out of the industry. He's physically declining, but his ego definitely hasn't gotten the memo.
Right, so he's basically a narcissist in decline.
Precisely. And he's been banned from every reputable hotel in the city due to his past antics, which is literally the only reason he is staying at a bed and breakfast. He's a pariah in the hospitality industry.
But he still feels this massive need to perform.
He needs the supply, as psychologists would call it, the attention. So despite Judith screaming at him not to do it and her husband Joe trying to intervene, Willie decides he's going to perform a stunt. He's going to jump out of a second-story window.
See, this is where I struggle with the logic of the source material. Why jump from a B&B window? There are no cameras there. Well, except for his own publicist, I guess. There's no crowd.
That is the absolute tragedy of it. The audience is minimal, but the risk is maximum. He's up there wearing the red sweats. He's checking his watch. It's pure theater for an audience of 3 people. And he aims for a patch of Convallaria majalis.
Which is lily of the valley.
Yes, lily of the valley.
Which is a soft ground cover,
yeah.
Right? Like, relatively speaking.
Ideally, yes. It would theoretically cushion a fall. But Willie completely ignores the environmental variables. The wind gusts are really high that day. He jumps. He's a lot lighter than he used to be. And the physics of the Pacific Northwest wind basically take over. He gets blown way off course.
And he lands in Pyracantha.
Yes. Now, do you know what a pyracantha is?
I assume from the context it's a bush, but you're saying it like it's a weapon?
Well, it's commonly known as firethorn. It is an evergreen shrub that's actually often used for defensive hedging because it has these hardened thorns that are about an inch long. They are needle sharp and they can puncture leather.
Oh, ouch. So this isn't just a little scratch we're talking about.
No, not at all. He lands directly in it. The result is a broken arm and a broken leg. But here is where the real insight from the text comes in. The physical injury is entirely secondary to the immediate social reaction.
You're talking about the entourage.
The Weevil entourage, yes. Willie hits the ground. He is actively writhing in thorns, and his companion, a woman named Pepper who has red hair and is described as very volatile, she doesn't rush over to check his airway or his pulse.
No.
She rushes over to assign liability.
She literally screams, "We're suing!"
Before the ambulance is even called. This shifts the narrative instantly. It is no longer an accident. It is a legal threat. Judith is suddenly facing financial ruin just because a man decided to jump out of her window.
And then there's Wayne Fielding, the publicist. This detail really stuck out to me when we were looking at the sources. He's standing there with a camera while his client is screaming in pain.
He is. And the text specifically notes that he seems way more concerned with the angle of the shot than the actual suffering of the man on the ground. It's the total commodification of tragedy. To Wayne and to Pepper, Willie's broken leg is just an asset. It's a potential payout, or at least a headline.
That is a terrifying dynamic for a B&B owner. You essentially have predators in your garden.
And you also have a mole in the house. Judith's son's friend, Justin Weevil, who is Willie's nephew, is also staying there. He actually gives us the background. He feels so incredibly guilty about his uncle's behavior that he writes Judith an IOU.
Oh, right. Payoff is one cooked goose.
Which is charming, sure, but it confirms that the family absolutely knows Willie is a user. Justin reveals that Willie has exploited his own family for publicity for years. So, Vector 1 of our stress convergence is fully active here. Legal and financial peril, backed by a long history of exploitation.
Which brings us to Vector 2, the family. Because apparently the threat of a massive lawsuit just isn't quite enough for 1 week.
No, of course not. We really have to talk about the sandwich generation dynamic playing out here.
Break that down for us, because it's a huge part of Judith's mindset.
It's that specific life stage, usually hitting when you're in your 40s or 50s, where you are literally squeezed between caring for aging parents, and Judith has her very eccentric mother, Gertrude, to deal with, and simultaneously supporting or dealing with your own adult children. Judith is the poster child for this pressure cooker.
Because right after the ambulance takes the litigious stuntman away, her son Mike and his wife Kristen just show up.
Surprise! It's Halloween. They arrive completely unannounced with the grandkids, and we really need to talk about Kristen.
Kristen, the supermom.
She represents a very specific type of stressor. I call it aggressive competence. She is the daughter-in-law who arrives, immediately takes over your kitchen, reorganizes your pantry because yours just isn't efficient enough, and makes you feel entirely inadequate while she's doing it.
And she brings homemade hard cider, right?
Which the source material heavily implies is basically moonshine. It is incredibly strong. But while she's pouring this absolute rocket fuel, she is lecturing Judith on self-esteem. She is actively diagnosing Judith as a doormat.
That's rich, coming from someone who just invaded her house completely unannounced.
It's a subtle psychological attack. It totally undermines Judith's authority in her own space. And meanwhile, the physical space itself is being consumed by the grandchildren's costumes.
The cardboard boxes.
Yes, Kristen made them, naturally. A race car and a robot puppy.
So you basically have 2 toddlers encased in square, sharp-edged cardboard boxes running around a house that is already filled with maximum tension.
It adds this layer of surrealism and claustrophobia. Judith is literally being tripped by her own family. She's dodging boxes, she's dodging lectures, and she's dodging a lawsuit.
So she has to run. It's not a vacation anymore at this point. It is an evacuation.
The fight-or-flight response fully kicks in. She chooses flight. She and her cousin Renee decide to execute a pre-planned trip to Boston via the Amtrak Empire Builder.
Now, I really have to ask about this. Why the train? If you urgently need to escape stress, a 3-day train ride across the country seems really slow. Why not just fly?
This brings us right into Renee's psychology. Renee has severe aviophobia, a massive fear of flying. She claims she can only get on a plane if she is heavily intoxicated.
Which seems like a solvable problem if she really wanted to.
Well, her husband Bill totally refuses to deal with her when she's in that state. He absolutely won't travel with drunken Renee. So the complicated arrangement is the husbands will fly to Boston for business, and the wives will take the train and just meet them there.
But getting to the train creates its own brand of chaos. We have to discuss the time change scheme. Because reading this, it seemed incredibly over-engineered.
Oh, it's a classic example of anxiety-driven control freaking out. Renee is so terrified of missing the train, so she decides to manipulate the clocks in her own house to trick her husband into leaving early.
But she forgets how she manipulated them.
She gets entirely confused between standard time and daylight savings time, and whether she moved the clocks forward or moved them back. It is literal chaos theory in action.
So they don't even know what time it actually is.
No, and neither does her husband. It results in this frantic, high-speed drive to this station where they very nearly take out a motorcycle. They are pumping pure adrenaline before they even step onto the platform.
But they do make it. They physically board the Empire Builder.
Breathless and stressed, yes, but they are on board.
Let's talk about the train itself for a minute, the Empire Builder. For those listening who haven't ridden an Amtrak long-distance route, paint the picture of this setting.
It is a legendary route. It goes from the Pacific Northwest right through the Cascade Tunnel, across Glacier National Park, and out onto the high plains of Montana and North Dakota. It is rugged, incredibly beautiful country.
And the train layout itself.
It's a double-decker superliner. You have the sleeping cars with the roomettes and the larger bedrooms, which are usually upstairs. You have the dining car with the white linen tablecloths, community seating, by the way, which becomes very important later. And you have the sightseer lounge, the observation car with the glass domed ceiling.
And sounds lovely. Like a moving hotel.
It's supposed to be a sanctuary, a locked room where the outside world just can't get to you. Judith genuinely thinks she has escaped Hillside Manor. She thinks she's safe.
Until she looks at the downstairs bedroom.
The accessible bedroom, room H, usually. It's on the lower level, specifically designed for passengers with mobility issues.
And who is inside?
It's Wee Willie Weevil.
The very man who is suing her.
The man who fell into her bush. He is on the exact same train, in the exact same car.
I have to challenge this a bit. What are the odds? Is this just a massive plot contrivance?
In fiction, we definitely call it fate. But if you look at the real-world logistics, it actually makes a lot of sense. Willie has a broken leg and a broken arm. He really can't fly commercially with that kind of hardware easily. He needs transport to the East Coast, maybe for better medical care or just to go home. The train is honestly the most comfortable option for an invalid.
Okay, that tracks. I buy that. But for Judith, it is an absolute nightmare.
It's the literal worst-case scenario. She flees her home to avoid a man, and she ends up trapped in a metal tube with him for 48 hours.
And he's not alone.
No. Pepper and Wayne are right there with him. The whole litigious circus made the trip.
So Judith's relaxing vacation immediately turns into a high-stakes stealth mission.
She regresses entirely. Instead of relaxing up in the observation car, she is hiding in her roomette. She's dodging the dining car meal times, actively trying to avoid crossing paths with them. She becomes a prisoner in her own escape plan.
But while she's hiding, she starts intensely observing the other passengers. And this is where the deep dive gets really interesting, because the demographic on this particular train is highly suspicious. It's not just regular tourists.
No, it feels like a cast of characters from a play. Let's run down the passenger manifest.
First up, the Johnstons.
The couple in the matching cowboy hats.
Now, matching hats, that feels like a costume to me.
It feels incredibly performative. Judith and Renee clock them almost immediately. They are way too Western. They just sit there. They don't say much at all. They just project this very specific image. It immediately raises the question, are they actually cowboys or are they people playing cowboys?
And you have the Kloppenbergs. They are in the room right next to Judith and Renee.
The Recluses.
They never come out.
Never. They demand all their meals be brought to them by the staff. They keep the curtains completely drawn on the door window.
Now, in any mystery narrative, a sealed door is a giant red flag.
Always. It completely begs the question, who is actually in there? Is it really an older couple? Is it a celebrity trying to lay low? Is it someone hiding a hostage? Or is it totally empty? The hermit passenger is a classic trope because it creates this void where you, the observer, can project basically any fear.
Then there's Dr. Matt Chan.
He seems like the normal control group at first. A young doctor, very friendly, highly capable. But then he reveals a secret.
He's a fanboy.
He is a Weevil superfan. He grew up obsessively watching Willie's movies. He completely idolizes the guy.
Which fundamentally changes his proximity to the victim. He's not just a random doctor anymore. He has a deep psychological motive to insert himself into Willie's orbit. Parasocial relationships can be incredibly intense.
And dangerous. If you finally meet your childhood hero and it turns out he's a washed-up, litigious jerk, how do you react to that shattered illusion?
Exactly. And finally, we have the two girls, Maddie and Tiff.
This is the detail that honestly bothers me the most out of everything. These are two young women. They claim they know Judith from a shoe store department, Nordquist's.
Oh, hi. You sold me these pumps.
Right, exactly like that. But Judith is absolutely convinced, and she has a very sharp visual memory, that these are the exact same two girls who came to her B&B right after the accident happened, asking weird questions about a rental property.
And when she confronts them about it...
They deny it, flat out. No, never been there, must be a mistake.
So gaslighting.
Effectively, yes.
Yeah.
And you have to stop and ask. Why lie? If you were just a looky-loo driving by the accident, you'd probably admit it. You'd say, oh yeah, we saw the ambulance, we were curious. By flatly denying it, they prove they have an agenda. They are actively concealing their movements.
Are they following Willie or are they following Judith?
It heavily suggests surveillance of some kind.
So we have a train fully loaded with liars, actors, obsessive fans, and litigants. It's a powder keg. And then we lose a staff member.
Roy. The sleeping car attendant.
Characterize Roy for us. Because in these types of stories, the service staff are usually completely invisible to the plot.
Roy is the anchor of stability on this trip. He's efficient, he's friendly, he turns down the beds, brings the coffee. He chats amiably with Judith and Rainey about the route. Specifically, he talks to them about the Isaac Walton Inn.
I actually looked this up. It's a real place.
It is. It's a very historic inn near Essex, Montana. It was originally built for railway workers. It is a famous flag stop.
Explain flag stop for the listeners who might not know train terminology.
A flag stop means the train does not automatically stop at the station. It only stops if there is a passenger on the platform trying to get on who physically signals the train, or a passenger on board who has a ticket to drop off there. Otherwise, the train just rolls right through without slowing down.
Okay, so Roy is seen near Essex, and then what?
He vanishes. Somewhere between the mountains and the high plains, he is simply gone.
How do they even notice?
The service stops, the beds aren't turned down in the evening, and then they meet Jax.
Jax is the other attendant.
Yes. She's younger, clearly way less experienced, and she is in a state of sheer panic. She confides in Judith and Rainey. She says, I can't find him. He's just gone.
Now let's look at the actual physics here. People do not just walk off trains that are moving at 50, 60 miles per hour.
Not without leaving a very messy body on the tracks, and there were no scheduled stops where he could have casually disembarked and just walked away to start a new life.
Could he have jumped? Some kind of suicide?
Jax completely dismisses that. He loved the job. He was extremely reliable. He was divorced, no kids. But he had a life he genuinely enjoyed. There were absolutely no signs of a personal crisis.
But there was a specific data point that connects his sudden disappearance directly to the passengers.
Yes, Jax mentions the timeline. The very last thing Roy did was serve breakfast to the reclusive Kloppenbergs.
The people behind the closed door.
Correct. He gathers the breakfast trays, he goes to that specific door, he interacts with whoever or whatever is inside that room, and he is never seen again.
That is deeply chilling.
It strongly suggests he saw something he wasn't supposed to see, or he was physically pulled into that room.
That completely turns the train from just a stressful environment into an active crime scene, a mobile crime scene.
And Judith is really the only one, aside from Rainey, who is actually piecing this together. The train crew is trying to keep it super quiet to avoid a mass panic. But while Judith is worrying about Roy, she finds a piece of physical evidence in her own luggage.
A camera.
She opens her carry-on bag and finds a Canon EOS 5D Mark II.
I am a bit of a camera nerd myself, so I looked up the specs for the era this story is set in. That is definitely not a casual point-and-shoot camera.
No, it's a full-frame DSLR. It's heavy. It's made of magnesium alloy. It's incredibly expensive. It is a tool specifically for professionals.
Judith thinks maybe she grabbed her son Mike's camera by mistake.
She calls him when she finally manages to get a bar of cell service out there, and he says, nope, absolutely not mine.
So she is essentially in possession of a stolen, or at least highly misplaced, professional camera.
Rennie points out the most obvious connection. Wayne Fielding, the publicist, was taking photos of the stunt back at the B&B with a professional camera.
So if this is Wayne's camera, how on earth did it get into Judith's bag?
That is the mystery. Did he plant it there? Did someone swap bags in the confusion of boarding at the station? Or did he hide it there on purpose because he didn't want to be caught with it if the police searched his room?
If it is Wayne's camera, it definitely has the photos of the stunt on the SD card.
Exactly. It might hold evidence that the stunt wasn't just a simple accident. Maybe the window ledge was greased. Maybe the bush was, well, you can't really move a giant bush, but maybe there is visual proof of negligence or outright sabotage.
Or maybe it has photos of something else entirely, something on the train.
But Judith doesn't actually get to find out immediately, because this story is a comedy of errors just as much as it is a mystery. Renee, trying to be helpful, takes the camera. She tries to return it or hide it somewhere better or move it. And in the general chaos of the train, the swaying motion, the cramped corridors, the complicated luggage racks, she loses it.
She loses the evidence.
It falls into the abyss of the communal luggage rack down in the lower level, but the mere existence of that camera adds this massive layer of paranoia. Judith knows she's carrying or was carrying something highly dangerous to someone.
And speaking of cryptic clues, we definitely have to talk about the sticky note, the ox.
This is such a great detail. Rainey steps on a piece of paper in the dome car. It literally sticks to the bottom of her shoe.
Just a piece of trash.
That's exactly what it looks like at a glance, but it has numbers scribbled on it and the letters OX.
Ox. Like the animal.
Or it's part of a larger word. Box. Pox. Fox. Or maybe it's a cipher.
Or oxygen.
Could definitely be. It's a fragment. But in a closed system like this train, where Roy has just vanished into thin air, no detail feels accidental. It feels like a code that someone dropped by mistake.
So let's just recap the pressure cooker before the final escalation hits. Judith is being actively sued by a man downstairs. The attendant is missing, highly likely murdered. She has a mysterious professional camera she can't find. She has a cryptic sticky note about an ox.
And she is heading deep into the middle of nowhere, Montana. The train is moving rapidly away from civilization, not toward it.
And that is exactly when the crash happens.
The sugar beet incident.
This is the part that genuinely made me pause and question reality while reading. A truck full of sugar beets.
It sounds totally absurd, doesn't it? Like something straight out of a cartoon. But let's look at the hard logistics. The train is near a place called Malta, or Scuttle. It slams into a truck parked right on the crossing. The truck is fully loaded with beets.
Is this normal for Montana?
The agriculture part is yes, but the expert analysis within the story itself points out a massive flaw: the harvest timing. It's late October. Sugar beets in that specific region are typically harvested earlier or in entirely different agricultural zones. Seeing a fully loaded beet truck just sitting on a crossing in late October is highly irregular.
And the driver of the truck?
Gone. Fled the scene completely.
So the truck was parked there on purpose?
That is the heavy implication. This wasn't a stalled engine. This was a barricade. If you want to force a train to stop in a desolate area where there are absolutely no witnesses, parking a heavy agricultural vehicle on the tracks is a crude but highly effective way to do it.
The impact completely disables the engine. The power goes out.
The train is dead in the water. No heat, no lights, just the dim emergency power. And outside, it's raining. It's freezing cold. They are entirely stranded in a sea of beets.
And this is where the timeline really culminates. The train stops, and immediately, Willie Weevil's medical condition crashes.
He gets worse.
Much worse.
Pepper starts screaming that someone tried to kill him. He is totally delirious. He's hallucinating wildly.
Is it the broken leg? Like sepsis setting in?
It seems systemic. Poisoning is the direct accusation Pepper throws out. She claims the B&B accident was a setup from the start, and now on the train, someone has finally finished the job.
Dr. Chan goes down to help him.
He does, but it is way beyond his medical capacity with the supplies on hand. They have to call an ambulance to meet the train out at this remote crossing.
That must be a complete logistical nightmare.
It is. They have to evacuate him off the train, manually maneuver him through the mud and the crushed beets to get to an ambulance that has driven all the way out to the tracks.
So Willie is evacuated, he is taken off the board.
But look at the state of play right now. Willie is gone, possibly poisoned. Roy is missing, almost certainly gone forever. The train is dead. And Judith. She physically collapses.
She faints.
She blacks out entirely. And I think this is a really crucial detail for the listener to understand the stakes. Judith isn't a superhero. She isn't James Bond. She is a grandmother dealing with high blood pressure and a bad hip.
She's mortal.
The compounded stress of these three converging timelines, the lawsuit, the intense family guilt, the literal murder mystery, it literally shuts her body down. Syncope. Dr. Chan has to check her vitals.
It really raises the tension because she can't just run away. She is physically vulnerable. If the killer comes for her next, she can't outrun them.
Exactly. She is trapped in the dark, in the freezing cold, with a potential killer on board who just orchestrated a massive train crash just to stop the locomotive.
So what is the big takeaway here? Beyond the obvious, don't take the train with a stuntman.
I think the takeaway is really about the inescapability of chaos. Judith tried to geographically remove herself from her stress. She thought, if I just go to Boston, all the problems will stay in Seattle.
But she failed to realize that the chaos wasn't just in the house.
No. She packed the chaos right in with her, literally, in the form of the camera in her bag. And she boarded a vessel, the train, that naturally acts as an accelerator for conflict. A train is a pressure cooker. You can't leave. You have to face the people you're with.
I want to leave the listeners with a final thought today about those two girls, Maddie and Tiff.
The ones who denied being at the B&B.
If this was a targeted hit on Willie, the poisoning, the crash, who are the agents here? Are the girls surveillance?
It is very possible. Think about it. If you are planning to kill a celebrity, even a washed-up one, you need spotters. You need to know exactly where he is at all times. Those girls were at the B&B right when he fell. They are on the train when he crashes. That is a lot for a coincidence.
And what about the Kloppenbergs?
The closed door.
You don't serve breakfast to a room and vanish unless the people inside that room are not who they say they are.
Or unless the room is totally empty and Roy found something else inside. A bomb, a weapon. Or maybe the Kloppenbergs are actually the cleaners.
The train ride isn't over yet. We're stuck in the beats, in the rain.
And the killer is definitely still on board.
We'll have to see if Judith ever actually makes it to Boston next time. Thanks for diving in with us.
Watch your step.